My hands shook slightly as I smoothed down my navy dress for the third time. 6 months ago, I'd bought it specifically for tonight, hanging it in the back of my closet like a promise. Now here I was, standing outside Giuseppe's on Newbury Street, watching the warm light spill onto the Boston sidewalk. The private dining room I'd reserved glowed behind frosted glass windows. 8 weeks of planning had gone into this dinner. Every detail mattered, because this wasn't just another family gathering. After 5 years of 70-hour weeks, missed birthdays, and more cups of terrible office coffee than any human should consume, I'd finally gotten the promotion that had been dangling just out of reach. Vice President of Strategic Development at Morrison Technologies. The title still felt surreal rolling around in my mind. I'd called Mom first with the news. She'd cried, actually cried, right there on the phone. "Sarah, honey, I knew you'd show them what you're made of," she'd said, between happy sobs. Dad had grabbed the phone to tell me how proud he was, his voice thick with emotion. Their reaction had made everything worth it. The restaurant door chimed as I pushed inside. Antonio, the maitre d', greeted me with his usual warmth. "Ms. Mitchell, your room is ready. The flowers arrived this morning. They're gorgeous." I'd splurged on white orchids and eucalyptus arrangements. Classy, but not showy. That was important, because I knew how my mother-in-law operated. Margaret could find fault in a sunset if she tried hard enough. Mom and Dad arrived first, right on time. Mom's face lit up when she saw me, and she pulled me into one of her signature bear hugs. "There's my VP," she whispered, and I felt like I was 12 again, showing her my honor roll certificate. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," Dad said, kissing my forehead. At 62, he still looked distinguished in his charcoal suit. Retirement had been good to him. My sister Emma burst through the door next, her red hair flying. Sorry, traffic on the pike was insane." She grabbed my hands, bouncing on her heels. "I can't believe my big sister is basically running the world now." "It's just a VP position," I laughed, but her enthusiasm was infectious. The room slowly filled with the people who mattered most. My mentor Janet arrived with her wife Linda, both looking elegant as always. 2 colleagues from my team, Marcus and Priya, showed up together, bickering good-naturedly about the Patriots' chances this season. Then the energy shifted. I felt it before I saw them. That subtle tension that always preceded my in-laws' arrival. Margaret swept in first, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Richard followed, looking uncomfortable as usual in social situations. "Hello, Sarah," Margaret said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. She brushed past me to embrace her son, my husband Tom, who'd been parking the car. "Tommy, darling, you look thin. Are you eating enough?" Tom caught my eye over his mother's shoulder and mouthed, "Sorry." After 3 years of marriage, we'd developed a whole silent language for dealing with his parents. "Margaret, Richard, so glad you could make it," I said, keeping my voice steady and warm. Margaret glanced around the room with the air of someone inspecting a hotel room for dust. "It's quaint," she pronounced, managing to make the compliment sound like criticism. The last surprise guest slipped in quietly. Daniel Morrison himself, the CEO of our company. I'd invited him out of protocol, never expecting he'd actually come. He preferred to stay out of the spotlight, running the company with quiet efficiency. He nodded at me from across the room, a ghost of a smile on his face. As everyone found their seats around the long mahogany table, I tried to shake off the knot forming in my stomach. This was my night. I'd earned this. Margaret's subtle digs couldn't take that away. The waitstaff began pouring wine, and conversation bubbled up naturally. Mom was telling Emma about their recent trip to Vermont. Marcus was explaining some coding breakthrough to anyone who'd listen. Margaret sat straight-backed, occasionally whispering to Richard. I stood, gently tapping my wine glass with a spoon. The room quieted, faces turning toward me expectantly. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I'd practiced this toast a dozen times in my bathroom mirror. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I began, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "It means everything to have the people I love most. Must be nice to have time for parties when some of us are handling real responsibilities." Margaret's voice cut through my words like a blade. She wasn't looking at me, instead studying her wine glass with theatrical interest. The words lodged in my throat. Around the table, I saw Mom's jaw tighten, Emma's eyes flash with anger. Tom started to speak, but Margaret waved him off. "I'm just saying," she continued, her tone suggesting concern while delivering poison. "Some people work their whole lives without needing a party for every little achievement, but I suppose everyone needs validation these days." Silence stretched across the table like spilled wine. I forced my lips into a smile, determined not to let her see how deep her words cut. This was supposed to be my moment of triumph. Instead, I felt like a child again, desperate for approval that would never come. I cleared my throat, lifted my glass higher, and continued my toast. The servers moved like choreographed dancers, placing plates of seared scallops and microgreens in front of each guest. I watched Margaret pick up her fork, examine it for spots, then set it down with a tiny sigh. Everything was a performance, with her. Conversation gradually resumed, though it felt forced now, like actors returning to their marks after someone had forgotten their lines. Emma, bless her, jumped in with a funny story about her kindergarten class, drawing genuine laughs from most of the table. Even Richard cracked a smile, though he quickly hid it behind his napkin when Margaret shot him a look. "So Sarah," Janet said, clearly trying to steer things back on track, "tell everyone about the Singapore project. That was really what clinched this promotion, wasn't it?" I appreciated the lifeline. "It was a team effort," I began, finding my footing again. "We managed to turn around a failing product launch in the Asian market. 6 months ago, we were looking at a $12 million loss. Yesterday, we closed the quarter up by 8%. "That's incredible," Priya chimed in. "I remember those late nights. Sarah literally slept in her office 3 nights in a row during the critical phase." "Sleeping in the office?" Margaret's voice dripped with false concern. "How dedicated. Though I do wonder what Tom thinks about having an absentee wife." Tom's hand found mine under the table. "I'm proud of her," he said firmly. "Sarah works harder than anyone I know." "Of course you are, dear." Margaret patted his arm. "You've always been too generous, just like your father." Richard shifted, uncomfortably, focusing intently on his scallops. Daniel Morrison had been silent throughout dinner, observing everything with those sharp gray eyes that missed nothing. I'd seen that look in board meetings. He was cataloging, analyzing, forming opinions. He'd ordered the salmon, eating with precise economical movements. "These scallops are excellent," Mom said, trying once again to normalize the conversation. "Sarah, didn't you say the chef here trained in Paris?" I nodded, grateful for her effort. "At Le Bernardin, actually. Then he—" "French cooking," Margaret interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "So much butter and cream. I've been trying to get Tom to eat healthier." "A wife should take care of her husband's health, don't you think?" Emma's fork clattered against her plate. "Are you seriously—" "Emma," I warned quietly. The last thing I needed was my sister going nuclear on my mother-in-law. "What?" "I'm just making conversation," Margaret said, eyes wide with manufactured innocence. "Though I must say, Sarah, you do look tired. All this work can't be good for you. Women weren't meant to carry such heavy burdens." "Mom?" Tom's voice carried a warning. "I'm fine," I said, though my cheeks burned. Better than fine, actually. This promotion means... Promotions come and go. Margaret said, finally meeting my eyes directly. But family? That's forever. I do hope you're not putting career ahead of giving me grandchildren. The words hit like a physical blow. We'd been trying for 2 years. The fertility treatments, the tests, the crushing disappointment month after month. She knew nothing about any of it because Tom and I had agreed to keep it private. Margaret, Richard said quietly. Perhaps this isn't the time. When is the time, Richard? She rounded on him. They've been married 3 years. At their age, they should be thinking about the future. Real accomplishments, not these corporate ladder games. I felt tears threatening and blinked them back furiously. Not here. Not now. Not in front of everyone. Marcus cleared his throat. Actually, Mrs. Mitchell, Sarah's work has directly impacted thousands of employees and their families. The Singapore project alone saved about 300 jobs. How noble, Margaret murmured, but her attention had shifted to the door where our main courses were arriving. The servers placed plates, with surgical precision. Filet mignon for most, including Margaret, who'd specified hers be cooked exactly medium rare, not a degree over. I'd ordered the duck, though my appetite had evaporated entirely. This looks wonderful, sweetheart, Dad said, shooting me an encouraging smile. He'd been uncharacteristically quiet, but I knew that look. He was furious on my behalf, but too polite to cause a scene. Tom squeezed my hand again. The duck looks perfect, he said softly. Remember that place in Prague where we had duck? On our honeymoon? I smiled despite everything. He was trying so hard to salvage this evening. With the cherry sauce, I said. You got it all over your shirt. Worth it, he grinned. Margaret's knife scraped against her plate as she cut into her steak. Prague, she mused. Another trip. You two certainly do travel a lot for people who claim to want children. This time, Tom's grip on my hand tightened. Mom, enough. I'm simply pointing out. I said enough. His voice had an edge I rarely heard. Margaret's eyebrows rose. Well, I see Sarah's influence is rubbing off on you. Such aggression. Daniel Morrison set down his fork with deliberate precision. For the first time all evening, he spoke. Mrs. Mitchell, he said, his voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. I've been sitting here listening to you disparage one of the finest executives I've had the pleasure of working with in 30 years. The table went silent. Even the servers seemed to pause mid-motion. I beg your pardon? Margaret's voice climbed an octave. You should, he replied coolly, though I doubt you will. Margaret's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. I'd never seen her speechless before. It was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. I believe, Daniel continued, his gray eyes fixed on Margaret, that you owe your daughter-in-law an apology. Several, actually. I don't know who you think you are. I think, he said, taking a measured sip of his wine. I'm someone who recognizes talent when I see it, and who doesn't appreciate watching that talent be diminished by someone who clearly doesn't understand what they're talking about. Margaret's face flushed deep red. She turned to Tom. Are you going to let this stranger speak to your mother this way? Tom looked between his mother and Daniel, then at me. Something shifted in his expression, a decision being made. He's not wrong, Mom. Tom! Margaret's voice was shrill now, the careful composure cracking. No, I'm done. Tom stood up, pulling me up with him. Sarah has worked her ass off for this promotion. She's brilliant, dedicated, and the best thing that ever happened to me. If you can't see that, if you can't be happy for her, for us, then maybe you shouldn't be here. Margaret stood as well, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. She looked around the table, seeking allies, finding none. Even Richard avoided her gaze. That's when she played her final card. Margaret drew herself up to her full height, her cream suit jacket pulling tight across her shoulders. The careful mask she'd worn all evening finally slipped completely, revealing something ugly and desperate beneath. "You want honesty?" she spat, her voice carrying across the entire private room. "Fine. Let's be honest." My stomach dropped. Tom tried to guide her back to her seat, but she shrugged him off with surprising force. "Sarah," she said, my name like it tasted bitter. "You're nothing but a parasite living off my son's good nature. This whole charade..." She gestured wildly. At the decorated room, the flowers, the gathered guests, this pathetic grab for attention. It's embarrassing. I couldn't breathe. The room tilted slightly, and I gripped the edge of the table. Somewhere in my peripheral vision, I saw Emma start to rise, but Mom held her back. "You think you're special because some company gave you a fancy title?" Margaret continued, her voice rising with each word. "Please, you just got lucky. Right place, right time. Probably slept your way there, if we're being completely honest." "Margaret!" Richard's voice cracked like a whip, but she was beyond stopping now. "What?" "Someone has to say it. Look at her. Playing dress-up in her little navy dress, pretending she's something more than a social climber who trapped my son with her working-class sob story." The tears I'd been fighting finally spilled over. Not from sadness, but from pure, white-hot rage. I opened my mouth to respond, to defend myself, to scream. I wasn't sure which, but no words came. "Mom, stop." Tom's voice was deadly quiet. "You're drunk. You're embarrassing yourself." "I'm embarrassing myself?" Margaret laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "That's rich. Your wife parades around like she's God's gift to the business world while you follow her around like a puppy. It's pathetic, Tom. Your father and I raised you better than this." "You raised me to be a bully?" Tom shot back. "To tear down the people I love? To have standards," Margaret shrieked. "To marry within your class, not some nobody from Southie, whose parents probably still shop at Walmart." That did it. Emma shot up from her chair so fast it toppled backward. "You bitter, jealous..." "Emma, no." Dad's voice cut through the chaos. He stood slowly, deliberately, fixing Margaret with a stare that could have frozen hell. "Mrs. Mitchell, I think it's time you left." "You can't throw me out," Margaret sputtered. "This is my son's..." "Actually," a calm voice interrupted, "he can." Everyone turned to look at Daniel Morrison. He hadn't moved from his seat, hadn't even raised his voice, but somehow commanded the room completely. "And if he doesn't," Daniel continued, setting his napkin beside his plate with careful precision, "I will." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "And who exactly are you to..." "I'm Daniel Morrison." He stood now, smoothing his tie. "CEO of Morrison Technologies, Sarah's boss." "Well," he paused, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Former boss, technically." The room went absolutely silent. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. "What?" The word escaped my lips as barely a whisper. Daniel turned to me, his expression softening. "I apologize for the timing, Sarah. I'd planned to tell you Monday morning, but given the circumstances..." He looked back at Margaret, who had gone pale. "As of today, Sarah isn't the VP of Strategic Development." My knees nearly buckled. After all this, were they taking the promotion away? Had I somehow failed before I'd even started? "She's the Executive Director of Global Operations," Daniel continued calmly. "My direct report, which makes her..." He turned back to Margaret with surgical precision. "Your boss, and your husband's boss, and the boss of roughly half the people at this table who work for Morrison Technologies." The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Richard had gone sheet white. Even Tom looked stunned. That's impossible, Margaret finally managed. She's too young, too inexperienced. Too what? Daniel's voice carried a warning. Too female? Too working class? Too married to your son? I didn't say. You didn't have to. He stepped closer to her, his presence suddenly imposing despite his average height. I've been watching Sarah for 3 years. She saved the Singapore project. She restructured our entire Asian division. She's the reason Morrison Technologies didn't have to lay off 800 people last quarter. Each accomplishment hit Margaret like a physical blow. She seemed to shrink with every word. But more than that, Daniel continued, his voice gentler now as he looked at me. She did it all while maintaining her integrity, while lifting up her team, while never once using her connections or playing politics. Unlike some people. His gaze swung back to Margaret, heavy with meaning. So yes, Mrs. Mitchell, your daughter-in-law, who you just called a parasite in front of her colleagues and family, is now one of the most powerful executives in our company. She'll be overseeing a budget of roughly $200 million and managing teams across 12 countries. Margaret swayed slightly. Richard reached for her arm, but she yanked away. This is a mistake, she whispered. Tom, tell them this is a mistake. Tom looked at her for a long moment. Then he walked over to me, wrapped his arm around my waist, and faced his mother. The only mistake, he said quietly, was inviting you tonight. Margaret's face crumpled. For a split second, I saw something almost human in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or recognition of what she'd just destroyed. Then the mask slammed back into place. Fine, she hissed. When this all falls apart, when she fails, and she will fail, don't come crying to me. She spun on her designer heels and stalked toward the door. Richard hesitated, looking between his wife and the rest of us. I'm sorry, he said quietly, the words seeming to encompass years of apologies he'd never made. Then he followed Margaret out. The door clicked shut behind them, and the room seemed to exhale collectively. Daniel returned to his seat, picking up his wine glass as if nothing had happened. Now then, he said mildly, I believe we were celebrating? A surprised laugh burst out of me, part hysteria, part relief, part genuine joy. Emma whooped and threw her arms around me. Mom was crying again but smiling through her tears. Janet raised her glass in a silent toast. Executive director? I managed to ask Daniel, still not quite believing it. He smiled, a real smile this time. You earned it. The board approved it unanimously yesterday. I was going to do the whole formal announcement Monday, but... He shrugged elegantly. Sometimes timing chooses itself. Tom pulled me closer, pressing a kiss to my temple. I'm so proud of you, he whispered. Then louder. And I'm so sorry about... Don't, I said, touching his lips. She made her choice. We'll deal with it tomorrow. Tomorrow, he agreed, then raised his glass. Tonight, we celebrate my brilliant wife. The toast that followed was everything my original one should have been. Warm, genuine, full of love and real pride. But as I looked around the table at these people who truly cared about me, who saw my worth beyond titles or salaries, I realized something important. Margaret had tried to humiliate me in my moment of triumph. Instead, she'd given me something far more valuable. Clarity. About who belonged in my life and who didn't. About what really mattered. And the knowledge that I'd never again shrink myself to fit someone else's idea of what I should be. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of congratulations, stories, and laughter. Marcus started a betting pool on how long before Margaret tried to use her son's connection to me for personal gain. Emma regaled the table with increasingly elaborate revenge fantasies. Even quiet Richard's absence felt like a relief, a wound cleaned out so it could finally heal. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Daniel pulled me aside. "You handled that with grace," he said simply. "That's why you're ready for this position." I didn't feel graceful, I admitted. I felt like I was drowning. "But you didn't drown," he pointed out. "And when someone tried to push you under, you didn't push back. You let the truth surface instead. That's leadership." He left shortly after, that ghost of a smile back on his face. One by one, the others filtered out. Janet and Linda, Marcus and Priya, until only family remained. "So," Emma said, kicking off her heels and curling up in a chair, "Christmas is going to be awkward this year." The understatement was so massive that I couldn't help but laugh. Tom groaned, covering his face with his hands. "I'll talk to her," he said, though we all knew it was pointless. "No," I said firmly. "You won't. We're done managing Margaret's emotions. She made her position clear tonight." Mom reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "I'm sorry you had to go through that, sweetheart. On what should have been your night." It was my night, I realized, as I said it. Just not the way I planned. Dad signaled for the check, waving away my protests. "Executive directors don't pay for their own promotion dinners," he said with mock seriousness. As we gathered our things to leave, I caught my reflection. In the dark window, navy dress slightly wrinkled, makeup probably smudged from the tears I'd finally let fall, but something had changed in my posture, in the way I held my head. I looked like an executive director. More importantly, I looked like myself. The air in Giuseppe's private dining room felt different now, like the pressure had dropped before a storm. Margaret's dramatic exit left a vacuum that nobody seemed quite sure how to fill. Richard's empty chair looked accusatory, his half-eaten filet mignon congealing on the plate. Tom's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and sighed. Dad's outside with her. He says she's... He paused, searching for words. "Upset." Emma snorted. "Upset? She just called your wife a gold-digging whore in front of her boss. She should be upset." "Emma," Mom warned, but there was no real heat in it. "What? Are we pretending that didn't just happen?" Emma's red hair whipped around as she turned to face Tom. "Your mother just tried to destroy Sarah's career. At her own promotion dinner." "I know what she did," Tom said quietly. His jaw was tight, that little muscle twitching the way it did when he was holding back anger. Daniel Morrison hadn't left yet. He stood by the window, looking out at Newbury Street with his hands clasped behind his back. The servers hovered uncertainly near the door, unsure whether to clear plates or disappear entirely. "Perhaps," Daniel said, without turning around, "we should address the elephant in the room." Everyone looked at him, then at me. I realized they were waiting for my lead, executive director. The title felt surreal, especially now. "Mr. Morrison." "Daniel," he corrected gently, finally facing us. "We'll be working closely together. Formality seems pointless now." "Daniel," I tried again, the name feeling strange on my tongue. "I don't want this to affect your position, your reputation." He smiled slightly. "Sarah, I've been in business for 30 years. I've seen every form of corporate drama imaginable. This?" He gestured vaguely at the room. "This is nothing. Although I must admit, your mother-in-law has a certain flair for the dramatic." Tom's phone buzzed again, and again. He turned it face down on the table with more force than necessary. "She's calling you," I said unnecessarily. "I know. Maybe you should..." No. The word came out sharp. Tom ran a hand through his hair, messing up the careful style. I'm done. I've spent years making excuses for her, trying to keep the peace. But this? He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before in his eyes. She went too far. Janet cleared her throat delicately. Linda and I should probably head out. Sarah, congratulations again. You deserve every bit of this success. She squeezed my shoulder as she passed, Linda murmuring her own congratulations. Marcus and Priya followed, both looking shell-shocked, but trying to be supportive. Marcus actually hugged me, which was surprising. He wasn't usually a hugger. Soon it was just family and Daniel, who seemed in no hurry to leave. Can I ask you something? I said to him, as he finally moved toward his coat. Of course. Did you really approve this promotion yesterday, or was that just... I struggled for the right word. Theater? Revenge? He chuckled. No, Sarah. The board signed off on Thursday. I was planning to tell you Monday morning in my office, make it official. But when I saw what was happening tonight... He shrugged. Sometimes the universe provides its own timing. Thank you, I said, meaning it. For standing up for me. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. His expression turned serious. I don't tolerate bullies, Sarah. In the boardroom or the dining room. Your mother-in-law needed to understand exactly who she was attacking, though I suspect she still doesn't quite grasp it. He left then, slipping out quietly like he'd arrived. The room felt smaller without him, more intimate, more real. So, Dad said, breaking the silence. Executive Director. The way he said it, with such quiet pride, almost broke me. I'd spent so many years trying to prove myself, to show that the girl from Southie could make something of herself. And here was my father, looking at me like I'd hung the moon. It's a big job, I said, suddenly feeling the weight of it. You'll be brilliant, Mom said firmly. You always are. Tom's phone rang, an actual call this time. We all looked at it vibrating against the white tablecloth. His mother's contact photo flashed on the screen, a picture from last Christmas, her smile, wide and fake as her pearls. Answer it, I said softly. Sarah, she's your mother. Answer it. He picked up the phone like it might bite him. Hi, Mom. I could hear her voice from across the table, shrill, demanding, playing the victim. Tom's face got progressively redder as he listened. No, Mom. No, I'm not. Mom, stop. Stop talking. He stood up, pacing to the window. I don't care what Dad thinks. I don't care what the ladies at the club will say. You humiliated my wife. You tried to destroy her reputation. In front of her boss. More shrieking from the phone. Tom held it away from his ear for a moment. Are you done? He asked when she finally paused. Good. Because I have something to say. Sarah is the best thing that ever happened to me. She's brilliant, kind, hardworking, and so far out of my league it's ridiculous. And you know what? Everyone sees it but you. I felt tears prick my eyes again, but these were different, better. If you can't respect her, if you can't be happy for her success, then we're done. I mean it, Mom. No more Sunday dinners, no more holidays, no more pretending everything's fine when you treat her like dirt. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then Margaret's voice, smaller now but still venomous. You're choosing her over your own mother? I'm choosing my wife, Tom said simply. I should have done it years ago. He hung up without saying goodbye, tossing the phone onto the table like it had burned him. When he turned back to us, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Tom, I started, but he shook his head. Don't make excuses for her. Don't. Tell me she'll come around. She won't. He returned to his seat, taking my hand. I'm sorry it took me this long to see it. Emma raised her wine glass. Well, this calls for a toast. To Tom, for finally growing a spine. Emma! Mom protested, but she was smiling. What? It's about time. Emma's grin was wicked. And to Sarah, for being too classy to throw wine in that woman's face, because I would have. Red wine, all over that cream suit. Despite everything, I laughed. Trust Emma to find the humor in disaster. We should go, Dad said gently. It's getting late, and you've had quite a night. We gathered our things slowly, like none of us wanted to leave the safety of this room where truth had finally been spoken. Tom helped me into my coat, his hands lingering on my shoulders. Are you okay? He asked quietly. I think so, I said, leaning back against him. Are you? I will be. He pressed a kiss to my hair. We will be. Outside, Newbury Street was quiet, most of the shops dark. A few couples walked hand in hand, laughing at private jokes. Normal people having normal nights. I envied them for about 30 seconds before I realized I wouldn't trade this messy, complicated real life for anything. Mom hugged me tight at the valet stand. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Not just for the promotion, for how you handled tonight. I didn't handle it, I said into her shoulder. I just survived it. Sometimes that's the same thing. They drove off in Dad's sensible Honda, Emma following in her beat-up Civic after, threatening to egg Margaret's house. She was kidding, probably. Tom and I waited for our car in comfortable silence. His phone had finally stopped buzzing, though I knew this was far from over. Margaret didn't give up easily. There would be flying monkeys, his Aunt Carol, his cousin Jennifer, all the relatives, who'd be deployed to guilt him into apologizing. She'll try to use this against you at work, Tom said, reading my mind. Let her try. I was surprised to find I meant it. Daniel's right. She has no idea what she's dealing with. Our car arrived, and Tom held the door for me. As we pulled away from Giuseppe's, I looked back at the restaurant one more time. In a few hours, they'd reset that private room for someone else's celebration, some other family's milestone. But tonight had been mine, messier and more complicated than I'd planned, but mine nonetheless. Executive Director Mitchell, Tom said softly, testing the words. It suits you. I laced my fingers through his. Outside the window, Boston blurred past. My city, where I'd grown up, where I'd fought for everything I'd achieved, where I'd continue to fight, but now from a position of power I'd never imagined. Yeah, I said, squeezing his hand. It really does. The house felt too quiet when we got home. Tom's keys clattered in the bowl by the door, the sound echoing in our little Victorian in Cambridge. We'd bought it 2 years ago, stretching our budget because I'd fallen in love with the old hardwood floors and the reading nook under the stairs. Now I kicked off my heels and padded into the kitchen in my stockings, leaving a trail of bobby pins from my carefully styled updo. Wine? Tom asked, already reaching for the bottle of Malbec we'd been saving. God, yes. He poured generous glasses while I opened the back door to let Chester out. Our golden retriever bounded into the yard, blissfully unaware of human drama. I envied him. She's already spinning this, Tom said, looking at his phone. Aunt Carol just texted me. Apparently, Mom's telling everyone you had her thrown out. By security. I laughed despite myself. Security? At Giuseppe's? And that I stood by and let it happen. That you've turned me against my family. He deleted the message without responding. Jennifer's already called twice. I took a long sip of wine, letting it warm my throat. Are you okay? Really? Tom leaned against the counter, considering. You know what? Yeah, I am. For the first time in, God, maybe ever, I feel like I can breathe. Chester scratched at the door, and I let him back in. He immediately went to Tom, sensing who needed comfort most. I should have done this years ago, Tom continued, absently rubbing Chester's ears. The way she treated you at our wedding should have been the last straw. Tom, no, let me say this. He met my eyes. I was a coward. Every snide comment, every backhanded compliment, every time she made you feel small, I saw it all. And I chose to keep the peace instead of protecting you. The raw honesty in his voice made my chest tight. You were stuck in the middle. That's an excuse. I'm her son, yeah, but I'm your husband first. I forgot that. Or maybe I never really understood it until tonight. My phone buzzed. Emma texting. From her car. Made it home. Still planning to egg the witch's house. Talk tomorrow. Love you, Executive Director Badass. I showed Tom, and he actually smiled. She's not really going to egg my mother's house, is she? Probably not, but I wouldn't put money on it. We moved to the living room, Chester following hopefully. I curled up on the couch, tucking my feet under me. Tom sat at the other end, close enough to touch but giving me space to process. Daniel stayed so late, I said. That wasn't normal, was it? None of tonight was normal. Tom swirled his wine thoughtfully. But no. CEOs don't usually hang around for the floor show at employee dinners. He could have announced my promotion anytime. Monday morning, like he planned. But he chose that moment. I replayed the scene, in my head. Daniel's calm voice cutting through Margaret's venom, the surgical precision of his timing. He protected you, Tom said simply. Not just from Mom, but from anyone who might have questioned your promotion later. Now everyone knows you have his full backing. My phone rang. The caller ID made my stomach flip. Daniel Morrison. It's him, I told Tom, who made a go-ahead gesture. Hello? Sarah, I apologize for calling so late. Daniel's voice was softer on the phone, less commanding. I wanted to check that you made it home safely. Yes, thank you. And thank you for earlier. For everything. A pause. I owe you an apology. I should have handled that differently. Using your promotion as a weapon wasn't entirely professional. But it was effective, I said. Indeed. I could hear the smile in his voice. Your mother-in-law has a remarkable talent for bringing out the petty in people. Even me, apparently. She has that effect. Sarah, I want you to know that everything I said tonight was true. You earned this position on merit alone. The board was unanimous. The timing was unfortunate, but the decision was made long before tonight's drama. I know, I said, though hearing it again helped. Good. I'll see you Monday morning. We have a lot to discuss about your new role. And Sarah, don't let tonight overshadow what this promotion means. You're going to do extraordinary things. After we hung up, I stared at the phone for a moment. Executive Director of Global Operations. The title still felt foreign, like wearing someone else's clothes. That was nice of him to call, Tom observed. He's not what I expected. In the office, he's so contained. Tonight was different. Everyone's different when they're defending something they believe in. Chester whined and nudged my hand. I scratched behind his ears automatically, thinking about Tom's words. Like you did tonight? That was long overdue. Tom moved closer, pulling my feet into his lap. I need to call Dad tomorrow. See how he's doing. This can't be easy for him either. Your dad's always been decent to me. He's spent 40 years letting her run everything. It's just easier that way, he says, but I'm not doing that to you. Not anymore. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds Chester's contented sighs and the occasional car passing outside. My phone lit up with messages, Congratulations, from colleagues who'd been at dinner, questions from others who'd already heard through the company grapevine. I'd deal with them tomorrow. Should I be worried? I asked eventually. About her trying to sabotage me at work. Tom considered this. She'll try. She'll call in favors, spread rumors, do her whole poison routine. But honestly, after tonight, I think she's got bigger problems. Daniel Morrison doesn't strike me as someone who forgets, or forgives. That sounds ominous. Realistic. Mom's spent years cultivating her image as this connected society maven. Having the CEO of Morrison Technologies publicly dress her down? That's social suicide in her world. I don't want to hurt her, I said, meaning it. I just want her to leave us alone. That might be the same thing for her. Tom's hands worked on my feet, finding all the sore spots from my heels. Her entire identity is wrapped up in being the mother who knows best, the social queen bee, the woman with all the connections. Tonight stripped all that away. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Janet. Drinks Thursday to celebrate properly? Without the floor show this time. Linda says she's never seen anything like tonight. You handled it like a champion. I showed Tom, who chuckled. At least you'll have good stories for the company Christmas party. Oh God, I'll have to face everyone. They saw you maintain dignity while someone tried to destroy you. They saw your boss defend you. They saw your husband choose you. That's not embarrassing, Sarah. That's powerful. Chester jumped onto the couch between us, clearly deciding we'd had enough human conversation. We adjusted around him, Tom's arm, finding its way around my shoulders. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. Not just for the promotion, for surviving tonight, for being gracious when Mom didn't deserve it, for being you. I turned to kiss him, tasting wine and promise. Thank you for choosing us, always, he murmured against my lips. From now on, always. Later, as we got ready for bed, normalcy crept back in small ways. Tom complained about the dry cleaning bill for his suit. I couldn't find my favorite face wash. Chester claimed the exact center of our bed, as usual. But everything had shifted. I could feel it in the space between us. Not distance, but a new kind of closeness. We'd been tested tonight. Not just as individuals, but as a unit. And we'd held. Think she'll call tomorrow? I asked as Tom turned out the light. Probably. But I won't answer. What about Christmas, Thanksgiving, family events? We'll figure it out. Or we won't. Either way, we're done managing her emotions. In the darkness, I found his hand. I love you. I love you too. Executive Director Mitchell. I smiled into my pillow. That's gonna take some getting used to. You've got time. Starting Monday. Monday. In 2 days, I'd walk into Morrison Technologies not as a VP, but as someone who reported directly to the CEO. Someone with real power to make changes. To impact lives and careers. The thought was thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. Tom? Do you think I'm ready for this? He pulled me closer, Chester grumbling at being disturbed. Sarah, you've been ready for this for years. The only person who didn't know it was you. I thought about that as sleep started to claim me. Maybe he was right. Maybe tonight, despite all its ugliness, had shown me something important. Not just about Margaret or Tom or even Daniel Morrison, but about myself. I'd been tested by fire and hadn't melted. I'd stood there, taking hit after hit, and stayed standing. And when someone finally stood up for me, I hadn't fallen apart with relief. I'd kept my composure, my dignity, my sense of self. Maybe that's what being ready really meant. Monday morning arrived with a September crispness that made Boston feel fresh and full of possibility. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror at 6 a.m., Chester watching from his bed as I held up 2 blazers. Navy or charcoal? Executive director seemed to call for charcoal. Big day, Tom said from the doorway, already dressed for his own job at the architectural firm. He'd made coffee, the good stuff from the place in Harvard Square, and handed me a mug. Terrified, I admitted, taking a grateful sip. You'll be brilliant. He kissed my temple. Dad called, by the way, while you were in the shower. I raised an eyebrow. And? He's staying at the Marriott downtown. Has been since Saturday night. Tom's expression was carefully neutral. Said he'll call you later to apologize properly. Richard had left Margaret? I filed that away to process later. Right now, I had bigger things to focus on. Morrison Technologies occupied a gleaming tower in the financial district, all glass and steel ambition. I'd walked through these doors thousands of times over the past 5 years, but today felt different. The security guard, Marcus, different Marcus, not from my team, did a double take as I swiped my badge. Morning, Ms. Mitchell. Heard congratulations are in order. News traveled fast. Thanks, Marcus. The elevator ride to the 40th floor had never felt longer. When the doors opened, I nearly walked to my old office out of habit before remembering. Executive directors had offices on 42, the executive floor. The floor where I'd only been for quarterly presentations and nerve-wracking performance reviews. Sarah! My assistant, former assistant, Jenny, jumped up from her desk. Oh my God, I heard about Friday night, and the promotion. Everyone's talking about it. Great. Morning, Jenny. Is it that bad? She bit her lip. Define bad? I mean, the story's gotten a bit embellished. Apparently, someone threw wine. Nobody threw anything, I said firmly. Just a family disagreement that got out of hand. Well, whatever happened, Daniel Morrison's assistant called. You're wanted on 42. And Sarah? Jenny's eyes sparkled. Knock 'em dead up there. The executive floor was quieter than the rest of the building, all thick carpets and hushed conversations. Daniel's assistant, Patricia, who'd terrified me as a junior analyst, actually smiled as she waved me through. He's expecting you. Coffee? I'm good, thanks. Daniel's office was exactly what you'd expect from a tech CEO who didn't believe in flash. Clean lines, minimal decoration, a view of Boston Harbor that probably cost more than my house. He stood, as I entered, gesturing to the sitting area rather than his desk. Sarah, how are you holding up? I'm fine, ready to work. I sat carefully, trying to project confidence I didn't entirely feel. Good, we have a lot to cover. He pulled out a folder that made my stomach drop. It was at least 2 inches thick. But first I should mention that your mother-in-law called me this morning. I nearly choked on air. She what? At 6:30, no less. Quite persistent. Got through 3 assistants before reaching Patricia. His eyes crinkled with amusement. She wanted to express her concerns about my hasty decision to promote you. Suggested I might want to reconsider before any official announcements were made. Daniel, I'm so sorry. He held up a hand. She also implied that you might have inappropriate leverage over me. The suggestions were quite creative, actually. I particularly enjoyed the theory that you'd discovered compromising information about my personal life. My face burned. She didn't. Oh, she did. Patricia has the recording if you'd like to hear it, legal insisted, given the nature of the allegations. I can't believe, actually no, I can believe it. I slumped back in the chair. What did you tell her? That if she contacted anyone at this company again, including her son when he's at work, I'd have our legal department look into charges of harassment and defamation. His tone was conversational, like he was discussing the weather. I also mentioned that we record all calls to the executive office. You're kidding. I don't kid about protecting my executives. He leaned forward. Sarah, let me be very clear. Your promotion has nothing to do with Friday night. but Friday night confirmed that I made the right choice. Grace under pressure, maintaining professionalism when personally attacked, understanding when to speak and when to let others handle things. These are qualities I need in my direct reports. I straightened. Thank you. I mean that. Don't thank me yet. He gestured to the folder. This is your transition package. New responsibilities, team structures, budget oversight. You'll have 3 weeks to get up to speed before taking full ownership. I've also assigned you a mentor, Janet actually. She volunteered. Wow. Okay. The folder felt heavier than it looked. One more thing. He moved to his desk, returning with a smaller envelope. Your new compensation package. I think you'll find it appropriate to the position. I opened it carefully and nearly swallowed my tongue. The number was significant. Life-changing, really. That's very generous. That's market rate for the position, plus the adjustment for the expanded scope we're giving you. Don't sell yourself short, Sarah. That's lesson 1. We spent the next 2 hours going through my new responsibilities. I'd be overseeing not just Asian operations now, but our entire global expansion strategy. 12 direct reports, 4 international offices, a budget that made my head spin. Questions? Daniel asked finally. Hundreds, but I'll figure them out. I know you will. Patricia will show you to your new office. Senior staff meeting is at 2. You're first as part of the executive team. I stood to leave, then paused. Daniel? Why did you really stay so late Friday night? He considered the question. I almost didn't come at all. Corporate social events aren't really my thing. But something told me I should be there. He smiled slightly. Call it intuition. Or maybe I just wanted good Italian food. Either way, I'm glad I was there. My new office was 3 doors down from Daniel's, with the same harbor view and twice the space of my old one. A nameplate already sat on the desk. Sarah Mitchell, Executive Director, Global Operations. I sank into the leather chair, my chair, and called Tom. How's the corner office? He asked without preamble. No corner, but the view's incredible and terrifying. Tom, the responsibility. You've got this. Oh, and Mom called me 3 times. She called Daniel too, at 6:30 this morning. Jesus. A pause. What did she want? To get me fired, essentially. He threatened legal action if she doesn't stop. Good for him. I blocked her number, by the way. And Aunt Carol's. And Jennifer's. It's quite peaceful, actually. Jenny appeared in my doorway with a plant. A small orchid in a silver pot. Housewarming gift, she said shyly. For the new office. It's beautiful. Thank you. After she left, I spent an hour just reading through my transition package. The scope was enormous, but exciting. Real power to make changes I'd been advocating for years. The authority to build something meaningful. At noon, Janet knocked and entered without waiting. Look at you. All executive and intimidating. Intimidating? I'm terrified. Good. Terrified means you understand the scope. Cocky would worry me. She sat across from me, studying my face. How are you, really? Friday was intense. It was. But in a weird way, I'm glad it happened. Everything's out in the open now. No more pretending. And Tom. He's been amazing. Finally standing up to her. His dad left her, apparently. He's in a hotel downtown. Janet whistled low. The empire crumbles. Good riddance, I say. That woman's been a poison pill for years. You knew? Honey, everyone knew. We just couldn't say anything. But watching her try to destroy you at your own celebration. Janet's expression hardened. That crossed every line. The senior staff meeting was in the main conference room, 20 executives around a massive table. I recognized most faces but had never been at the table with them. CFO, CTO, heads of various divisions. all looking at me with curiosity and, I hoped, respect. Daniel introduced me briefly, then moved on to business. I took notes, contributed when I knew the topic, stayed quiet when I didn't, learning the rhythm of this new level. Afterward, the CFO, Samantha Chen, pulled me aside. "Heard you had quite the promotion dinner." I tensed, but her smile was warm. "Family drama. You know how it is." "I do, actually. My mother-in-law once told me I was too ambitious for a woman at my wedding reception." She laughed. "Now I control a budget bigger than the GDP of some small countries. Funny how things work out." The rest of the week blurred together. Meetings with my new teams, transitioning my old responsibilities, learning systems and processes I'd only seen from the outside. Every night, I came home exhausted but exhilarated. Margaret tried everything. Calls to HR, blocked by legal. Emails to board members, ignored. Even showing up at the building, escorted out by security. Each attempt made her look more desperate, more unhinged. "Dad moved back home," Tom told me Thursday night. "But they're sleeping in separate rooms. He says she's barely speaking to him." "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. Despite everything, I didn't want to destroy Tom's family. "Don't be. This has been building for years. You were just the catalyst." Friday afternoon, I stood in my office looking out at the harbor. 1 week since the dinner. Since everything changed. My desk was covered in reports, my calendar full of meetings that actually mattered. The orchid from Jenny sat on the windowsill, a spot of color against all the corporate gray. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "Drinks tonight to celebrate your first week as corporate overlord? Promise no family drama, just sisters and wine." I smiled, typing back. "Yes, God, yes." Another buzz, this time from a number I didn't recognize. "Sarah, this is Richard. I wanted to apologize for last Friday and for Margaret's behavior since. You deserved none of that. I hope someday you'll forgive my cowardice in not speaking up sooner. You're a remarkable woman, and my son is lucky to have you. I'm proud to call you daughter-in-law." I stared at the message for a long moment, then saved the number. Maybe there was hope for some relationships after all. "Ready for the partner meeting?" Patricia's voice from my doorway. I grabbed my materials, straightened my charcoal blazer. Definitely the right choice, and headed for the conference room. Ready? Maybe not entirely. But I was done waiting for permission to take my place at the table. The view from the 42nd floor really was spectacular. But the view looking forward? That was even better.